The morning was chaos, a cosmic joke unfolding on my lawn. A fire truck, 3 cop cars, and a woman in a satin robe smugly stood in front of my house. I was barefoot, coffee cooling in my hand, as officers instructed me to turn off my generator. The absurdity hit like a freight train. This was not some generic generator. It was a FEMA-registered emergency unit plugged into federal disaster networks. I locked eyes with Susan Wheeler, arms crossed, smirking as if she'd just rescued the world. Then I spoke calm and measured this generator's FEMA, approved for Region 4 disaster response. You didn't just call the police on Mo attempt to sabotage federal infrastructure. Her jaw fell. Her triumph lost. For that moment, her silence louder than the sirens was worth every dollar I'd ever laid out on the machine. But let's go back to how this insanity started. I live in a peaceful, semi-rural pocket out of town where retirees value quiet and room to breathe. My home is sound, my lawn expansive, and behind a steel shed stands a high-capacity generator, not for display but for survival, as a FEMA logistics contractor. I coordinate in times of crisis, floods, wildfires, blackouts. This unit drives SafeComs, encrypted servers, and backup systems connected to federal grids. It's noisy but legal, essential for keeping communities alive when the worst happens. Trouble simmered 3 days before a predicted storm procedure called for a 90-minute generator test. I alerted neighbors through our group chat. Most dismissed it when sent a cool-faced Susan, who only complained in the chat about mailbox colors or renegade bird feeders. Neither saw it or cared 20 minutes into the test. Her blinds flapped. Susan's house, a beige temple to decorative pumpkins and control, resided across the street. She's the kind to measure blades of grass and complain about unapproved porch lights. I prepared myself for a complaint, but she flipped out at 10:30 a.m., sirens blared. I went outside as 2 cruisers and a fire engine screamed to a stop in my front yard. Officers stepped up, grim faces questioning industrial noise. My gut dropped ass leak explosion. Then Susan pranced out, robe flying, grasping a folder marked noise violations, gesturing at me, yelling, "That's him, he's operating illegal equipment." I muffled a guffaw. An officer queried the generator. I took him to the shed with the FEMA tags, serial number, and federal clearance badge. Susan marched past, waving her folder. "I've logged decibel violations, it's disruptive." I asked if she knew the generator's purpose, something shady. She snapped. That's when I dropped the truth. It's a FEMA emergency unit, part of the storm response grid. Shutting it down risks felony charges under federal law. The air froze. The fire chief checked the tags, nodded to the cops' FEMA gear. "We're clear." Susan sputtered, regarding her cat's anxiety. An officer advised her to take it up with the HOA, not 911. As the trucks left, her glare could have melted steel. I sipped my coffee and went inside the following morning. A green envelope awaited my mailbox in HOA complaint, signed by the board chair, and Susan, now a board member, requiring me to stop generator use. I laughed, scanned it, and sent it to my FEMA boss, CCNG, the regional office. I didn't respond to the HOA, let the feds deal with it. I thought, that's the end of it. I was mistaken. Susan wasn't petty. She was on a mission, and she just stumbled upon a federal landmine the day following the letter. 2 dark-colored SUVs came into the neighborhood, parking at the HOA clubhouse. 2 agents, one in a FEMA jacket, the other carrying a Homeland Security vibe, exited, Susan clipboard in hand. Attempted to block them, requesting credentials. The FEMA agent breezed past, flashing a badge, and Susan stood agog from my porch, hiding a grin inside the board's regular meeting turned into a 2-hour lecture on hindering federal assets. The agents exhibited my generator's specifications, its place in disaster procedures, and a list of sanctions for interference. Word spread. Quick neighbors texted, nosy but cautious. I said I couldn't talk about it, fueling rumors. The HOA's grievance disappeared. But Susan doubled down. 2 days later, a man in a fluorescent vest walked my sidewalk, notepad and a cheap environmental auditor badge in hand. His equipment shouted, "Fake clean sneakers, dollar store gas detector." He walked onto my lawn, investigating alongside the generator. My cameras, 4K and facial recognition equipped, captured every step I spoke to him. He asserted the HOA employed him for a pollution inspection. His badge was a photocopy, informed me he'd trespassed on federal property. He fled. I made a sheriff's report and forwarded the video to FEMA that evening. Susan bragged on the HOA board forum, crowing about an inspector detecting generator leaks. She suggested toxic runoff. It was brazen and dumb. Come morning, FEMA's lawyers responded with threats of obstruction charges to the HOA. The inspector, a handyman Susan hired online, paid to pretend DHS, flagged the episode, and state emergency responders joined the fray. Susan's hoax had turned a neighbor spat into a federal case. She didn't cease. Susan put up signs on her yard, alerting of radiation from generators. The HOA board distanced itself, pulling back their letter with a non-specific newsletter comment on systems of compliance. Susan ranted to anyone who would listen, making charges of government conspiracies and hidden tests. Neighbors grew tired. Her supporters ghosted at an HOA meeting full of interested residents. FEMA officials clarified the purpose of the generator and federal safeguards. Susan prevented from speaking because of her accusations. Notice that in the background was the kicker. FEMA suggested a new comms tower adjacent to Susan's residence for its ideal elevation. Her face, a storm cloud laughter broke out when a neighbor joked, "She'll get free Wi-Fi." Susan was no longer a leader. She was a liability, her control slipping at 2:43 a.m. My phone buzz motion alert infrared feeds revealed. Susan wearing a hoodie, moving towards the generator with bolt cutters, she bungled at the lock, initiating a low voltage pulse. A spark flashed. She screamed, fell into mud and limped away. Flashlight lost. I saved the video, backed it up, and called the sheriff by noon. They served her with a notice for trespassing and tampering with federal equipment. Her blinds slammed shut. Her patrols stopped online. She posted anonymously warning of sonic weapons and clandestine grids. Everyone knew it was her. FEMA initiated an investigation audit of the HOA's activities. 3 board members quit for mismanagement. Susan was the punchline of her conspiracy flyers, trolled in group chats. The breaking point was her last performance at a community picnic. She burst in distributing pink flyers entitled "Generator Truth," filled with outlandish accusations: EMF poisoning, FEMA bribes, a drawing of radiation waves striking her roof. A neighbor captured her rant, posting it with Susan's Breakdown Generator edition. It reached 2 million views, memes inundating social media. She was nuclear. Nancy, a viral cautionary tale. Her home grew dark, yard unkempt. A moving truck showed up by evening. She was gone. No goodbye. The HOA recrafted its regulations prohibiting loan grievances. A neighbor's yard filled with gnome first responders. As a memorial, FEMA sent me a plaque: resistance against too much power. I installed it on the generator shed. New neighbors arrived: Mark, ex-Marine, and sister Claire, Coast Guard. Vet, they'd viewed Susan's video in a training brief on how not to mess with feds. Mark assisted, filled my gas tank. Claire discovered Susan's old records in her garage, drones, maps, complaints, and archive of paranoia. We laughed, joking about framing it. The neighborhood breathe easier, kids noisier, smiles freer at a barbecue. Mark toasted to feds' fences and fallen Susans. We clinked beers, the generator purring gently. A constant beat of justice, Susan's whir. Wasn't my handiwork. She lit the fuse. I let truth burn hotter than her lies.